Hi everyone, welcome back to session 15 of Idioms and Phrases. Today I want to start this class with something that I read recently, and it said that in Japan people treat laziness as a disease. So if you're being lazy and you're not making your notes and you're not keeping a hold of whatever you're learning, then you might lag behind, you might not be able to do what you want to do, you might not be able to achieve what you actually want to achieve and what has always been your dream. So it might become very difficult, and then eventually it would also become sad, right? So in order to reach where you want to reach, please stop being lazy, make your notes, read your notes every day, revise them, practice your questions, uh, whatever questions these are. If you know that you are lacking behind in vocabulary or idioms or parajumbles or RCs, make sure that you practice that particular topic every day, because consistency is actually the key. All these things that we talk about, we read, they sound idealistic, they sound like very fancy, that consistency is the key, but it actually is the key. It's not just fancy, but it's a fact, right? तो जब तक हर चीज को हर दिन नहीं करोगे, तब तक you won't be able to achieve what you want. There's this book called Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits के शुरुआत में ही there is this concept that the author talks about the plateau of latent potential. So basically in this concept, the author actually means that if you, for example, you go to the gym today, and then you go to the gym after 5 days, and then after 10 days, and then after 15, 20, whatsoever, you won't be able to achieve the desired body shape that you want, right? But if you'll go 1, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th every day, you might not see the changes in the initial phases, in the initial months or days, but one day, or maybe on the 60th day, you would actually feel the difference. So it's not about how quickly you achieve things, it's about how consistent you are with what you're doing, right? So on this very beautiful note that don't be lazy, be consistent, let's begin today's class, and let's learn a few idioms and phrases that might appear in the exam. Right, let's fly together, and this is session 15 with JB, and here we go. So the idiom number 1 is on the whole. On the whole is basically, generally. It means in most cases, or considering everything. It is basically used to give a general opinion or a general summary that might have exceptions, obviously, but let's see what it says. So generally speaking, whenever you say on the whole, basically in most cases, like, on the whole the reform was beneficial, on the whole I had the best dinner tonight, yesterday night, not tonight. How will I just tell the future? But anyway, let's be hopeful, right? So, yep. Just 1 second, one more second. Yes. Okay. Moving on. On the brink of. Okay, so on the brink of is basically, very close to a new significant or dangerous or exciting situation or maybe event. It's just like being very near to a collapse. मतलब अब इस edge के बाद there is nothing and you might collapse, and something bad or maybe something very exciting might happen. ठीक है? So अब इसमें you can basically use it for some collapse, war, or maybe some discovery, right? किसी के लिए भी you or maybe bankruptcy as well, right? This particular idiom on the brink is often used with nouns like जैसे कि discovery के साथ, या फिर war, या फिर bankruptcy, जैसे कि मैंने अभी बताया. ठीक है. So figurative meaning इसका होगा very close to a major event or change. मतलब आप एक एज पे हो, बेसिकली समझो. ठीक है. द कंपनी वॉज ऑन द ब्रिंक ऑफ कोलैप्स, द कंट्रीज आर ऑन द ब्रिंक ऑफ वॉर, राइट. I am on the brink of discovering new things about myself, right? So very close to a major event that might bring in change, that might bring in excitement, danger, depends on what it is, right? Contextual हो गया कि किस चीज़ के बारे में आप बात कर रहे हो, right? This particular idiom on the brink is also interchangeable with um, on the verge of. You must have heard on the verge of. I'm on the verge of breaking down, right? जब भी आप सैड होते हो या कुछ ऐसे बहुत बहुत ही कॉमनली आपने ये सुना होगा. But these two idioms, they are, you know, carrying more, they're quite different, but this on the verge is actually carrying more dramatic weight. तो थोड़ा सा difference होगा, but again they can be interchangeably used. Dramatic इसलिए because I say that I'm on the verge of breaking down, right? Breaking down again is not a literal thing that would happen, but what I want to say is that I might, you know, cry, है ना. तो इसलिए dramatic है. Okay. Abhi, on the face of it, just 1 second, then there are more idioms like on the account of, you must have heard. On the account of, which means due to, which means because of, right? On the account of my brother's success or his birthday or whatever, I organized this party. So basically due to and because of. ठीक है. Then there can be more. जैसे कि on the contrary. On the contrary is basically used to contradict a previous statement. जैसे कि आपने पहले कुछ कहा, for example, he didn't fail, on the contrary he excelled. तो ये दो अलग बातें हुई, आपने in contrast बोली. तो on the contrary भी आप यूज कर सकते हैं. Then there is on the face of it. On the face of it means apparently but possibly misleading. तो आपने कहा on the face of it the plan seems effective, but अभी लग रहा है, apparently, you know, you're not being sure here, but आपको थोड़ा conundrum तो है यहाँ, एकदम sure नहीं हो आप, but still you say on the face of it the plan seems effective, but maybe it's not, right? आपको बाद में पता चलेगा, but or maybe it is. On thin ice. On thin ice is basically, you know, in a risky, precarious or dangerous situation where typically one wrong move could actually lead to some serious trouble or maybe some कुछ किसी भी प्रॉब्लम में आपको डाल दे. जस्ट वन रॉन्ग मूव, लाइक इट इज़ बेसिकली लाइक स्टैंडिंग ऑन आइस दैट इज़ टू वीक टू होल्ड यू, राइट. तो एक ऐसा एज, राइट. सो ऑन थिन आइस, फॉर एग्जाम्पल स्टैंडिंग ऑन फ्रजाइल आइस, लिटरल मीनिंग हो गया इसका, इन अ रिस्की और डेलिकेट सिचुएशन. ही इज़ ऑन थिन आइस आफ्टर मिसिंग डेडलाइंस. वाई? क्योंकि ये बेसिकली ये एक फ्रेजिलिटी मेटाफर है. फ्रजाइल किसी भी फ्रजाइल चीज़ को अगर आप यू नो इन कॉन्टेक्स्ट बताना चाहते हैं, सो दैट्स व्हेन यू यूज दिस पर्टिकुलर इडियम. On the same wavelength, okay, on the same wavelength, which means, just 1 second, thinking alike, like we both are on the same page, we are, you know, we understand each other, there's mutual understanding, the team is finally on the same wavelength. So it is very important to be on same wavelengths with your family, with your friends, with your teachers, everybody, right? Because it actually makes your life easier, of course. Okay, then there's on the radar. On the radar is basically that something is something is noticed, it is being considered, or something is within someone's awareness, right? So you can say like the issue is now on policymakers radar. That means ki they are aware about it, they are being considerate about it, or it is in their notice, right? So figuratively it says that noticed or under consideration. Very simple to learn, very simple to. Then you must have heard one idiom called once in or in the blue moon. Very commonly used, very commonly used, and it means very rarely. Very rarely. Then there is open a can of worms. Now, khud socho. I am not giving you any hint, or I am not just directly telling the meaning, but think. Just read this particular idiom, one open a can of worms. So worms, how are they? Right? They are like noodles, right? They seem to be very complicated, uljhe hue, right? So basically it actually means to start a complicated, messy, or maybe unpleasant situation that creates many new problems, या फिर वो आपको एक greater greater situation में, greater bad situation में, situations can be good or bad, बहुत और बुरी situation में डाल सकते हैं, right? And this basically happens when you are actually trying to fix something, किसी issue को थोड़ा कम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. That's when this is typically used. So create complex problems by addressing an issue. So कई बार होता है ना that there is an issue, but it's like fine, you don't need to mess with it, but once you mess with it, it actually creates some bigger problems, right? For example, revisiting the policy opened a can of worms. Then again, why do we have same? Okay, anyway, we learned some more idioms. जैसे कि हो सकता है out of the woods. Out of the woods basically is when you pass the worst situation, like when you are actually, the danger is over. That's when you use basically being safe. So out of the woods, I am out of the woods. That means I am safe. Then there can be over and above. Over and above. It means in addition to. ठीक है? Over and above, over the long howl. Okay, basically over a long period of time is over the long howl. In the long run, over a long period of time, basically requiring sustained efforts or commitment. Even though, please note, even though difficulties होंगी उस situation में, and you want to finally reach to a final outcome. तो एक लंबे समय sustained efforts चाहिए होंगे, and then commitment चाहिए होगी, but there will be difficulties to reach a final outcome. Example, education pays off over the long howl. That means it will be a long period of time, you will require consistency, you'll have to be sustainable in whatever you do, right? जो भी आप करो, maybe whatever field you choose, even though हर चीज़ में difficulty आती है, तो career में भी difficulty आएगी, but education, पढ़ना लिखना, this will actually take you a long way, right? एकदम अच्छा है. Out of the question. Okay, out of the question is basically that something is completely, it's completely impossible. Something that's not allowed at all, or something that's not worth discussing. है ना, कि बिल्कुल ही मतलब कर ही नहीं सकते आप. So for example, a friend asks you that do you want to come out and have momos, but you are somebody who's health conscious, so you say no, that's out of question. That means that is impossible, that is not allowed with me, I am not going to come and have momo with you, right? So इसी की तरह एक हो सकता है out of the blue. Out of the blue मतलब unexpectedly, that out of the blue my friend came and surprised me, right? So out of line हो सकता है, अगर हम out की ही बात करें, there can be many. Out of line, which means inappropriate, right? Inappropriate or unacceptable, कोई कुछ भी हो सकता है, it can be anything, right? So out of line, if somebody is being out of line, that means they are being inappropriate, or their behavior is inappropriate, or their behavior is unacceptable, right? They're behaving in a certain way which cannot be accepted at all, at any cost. You just cannot take it, right? You can't stand it. That's when you use out of the line. Then there can be out of step. Out of step, basically something that's not in agreement with the trends, right, or with the norms, that's out of step. Then there can be out of um, out of one's depth. Out of one's depth, not literal depth, but it means that somebody is lacking skills, right, or understanding. So when you say this is out of his depth, that means he is not very skilled for that, doing that, or he is not very capable of understanding a particular thing. Okay, so for out of the question, impossible or unacceptable, a delay is out of the question, which means it cannot happen. Delay is not acceptable and it is impossible. You will have to be on time. On equal footing, which means being in the same position or having the same status, rights, or opportunities as someone else. It can be anyone. So there's being, an equal par. Par se related we have one idiom. Fair and equal conditions for everybody, even if it is somebody who is underprivileged, somebody who's privileged, but you are being, there are equal footings for everybody. Okay, so all candidates must compete on equal footing. तो एकदम ही बराबर, there is no privilege provided to anybody. It's like everything is equal. There is not just equality, there's equality. Equity nahi, I was about to say equity, but no, equity wouldn't work here. Then on a par, let's see on a par kya hota hai. Equal to, right? Indian universities are on par with global standards. Just 1 second. Okay, on the card भी हो सकता है एक, on the card, which means something that's likely to happen, है ना, हो सकता है. Then there can be off the cuff. Now off the cuff is one idiom that appeared in IPMAT exams. So it actually means without preparation. Without preparation मतलब अचानक से, randomly, or extempore, बहुत ही बस अचानक से. So without preparation, off the cuff. Then there can be more actually. Off the blame भी हो सकता है. Off the blame. ये तो off the blame, OFF, so you can easily understand that it means free from blame or obligations, right? So there is no blame, obligation. Maybe some blame or obligation was put on someone, but now they are off the blame. And then there can be on shaky ground. On shaky ground, which means weak or uncertain position. Okay, there can be so many. On a par, with, equal to, basically at the same level, or और कैसे, बेसिकली समथिंग दैट्स कंपेरेबल इन क्वालिटी. तो यहाँ पे जैसे हम इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटीज़ की बात करें एंड दे से दैट दे आर ऑन पार विद ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स, तो हम बोल रहे हैं कि एकदम इक्वली कंपेरेबल है ये, राइट. आर IIMs and the universities outside, they're like, very equal. In fact, our IIMs are better. Okay, chalo. On the mend means, recovering or improving after illness, maybe injury. Just it actually happened with me a few days back. I got sick and I got really sick, and then I was on the mend, so I was recovering, right? Dhire. That's on the mend. Improving, for example, the economy is on the bend, or I am on the mend, not bend, mend, right? So that means it is recovering something that happened in the past, and it actually decreased the good of something, maybe somebody's health, economy or anything. तो अभी वो वापस आ रहा है, it is recovering. ठीक है. There can be more idioms, we will actually talk about them. Then there's out of touch. Out of touch is unaware of the certain realities, right? कि आपको पता ही नहीं है क्या चल रहा है, right? Unaware of current realities or maybe certain realities जो चल रहे हैं यहाँ पे. So the policy seems out of touch with ground realities. So current realities not aware about. So out of touch. I was out of touch about blah 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 thing, right? On a tight leash से समझ आ रहा है being under strict control. That's on a tight leash. Maybe limited freedom हो वहाँ पे, और बहुत ही close supervision हो. That's when you use on a tight leash. Under strict control, spending is kept on a tight leash. So spending, like spending money, right? Then there can be more idioms, जैसे कि एक हो सकता है over the years, like gradually over time. इसका मतलब होता है कि मतलब धीरे धीरे, right? Gradually over the years. And then there can be more shaky. Yep, we did that. On the par we did. Over the top. Over the top मतलब excessive, बहुत ज़्यादा, right? Then there can be out of the loop. These are some simple idioms that you use on the daily basis. Out of loop, which means uninformed. You did not inform someone, you did not keep someone in the loop. Then there can be on the safe side. To be on the safer side, or on the safer side, or on the safe side. Basically, when you're acting cautiously, you are being very, very mindful about what you do. So you're always being on the safer side. Out of place, out of the place, or out of place. मतलब कि कोई inappropriate context हुआ, या फिर generally you use it like this also, that I felt out of place. That means कि वहाँ पे I did not feel that I am appropriate to be there with those certain people. They can be anything. Maybe they made you feel out of place, and that's a very, very sad thing to do with anybody. So if you, obviously you all have friend circles, you all have friends, or you just simply have people that you know, never ever make someone feel out of place. Never, because it is a cycle. It will one day eventually come back to you, and then you will be in a place where you will feel out of place, and that would be sad. Then nobody wants something like that to happen with them. And if you don't want something to happen with yourself, make sure that you don't do it with someone else as well, right? Tabhi, karma is a real thing. Okay. Right? So we're done with today's idiom. Do we have any more? Off the blame, on shaky ground, we talked about. Out in the open. Out in the open, did we out in the open, basically something that's known by public. So out in the open is used when it's like known in the public, right? Then there can be on the rise, बहुत simple है. On the rise, on the rise, increasing. Then on the decline भी यूज होता है, मतलब डिक्रीजिंग, ये तो वर्ड से ही समझ आ रहा है. Over one's head, over one's head. These kind of idioms are basically asked when they give you a sentence and they ask you which one of the following idioms would fit the best in this particular sentence. So you should always make your own sentences while learning the idioms, right? That's the best thing, and that's the best you can do in order to learn your idioms very effectively, because then again they will go into your dormant learning. So in order to bring them into your active learning, you must always consciously practice them, use them in your conversations, and yes, you can teach them to your younger or elder siblings also. And that's also nice. So that was all for today. If you guys have any questions, any doubts, you can always ask me, और पूछ सकते हो, कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो, कुछ भी हो. प्रिपरेशन में कितना टाइम है? मे बी यू माइट बी प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर 26, 27, बट येस, दिस इज़ द राइट टाइम टू स्टार्ट फॉर 27. फॉर 26 इट्स क्वाइट लेट नाउ, बट कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती, राइट? Okay, bye bye. I'll see you in the next session. Keep learning and all the best.